Now we've got on the topic of rise of facial recognition technology, Boon or Bane. And we've got our speakers with us who are joining, none other than Dr. Satyam Priyadarshy, Technology Fellow and Chief Data Scientist, Halliburton, one of the top global influential leaders for leading digital transformation and a veteran of big data. Well, he's somebody who has a global reputation in big data, implementing powerful solutions through expertise in all aspects of the data pyramid that works well with business strategy and organizational strategy. He has extensive management consulting and a corporate leadership experience in various companies, including Fortune 100 to startups. So thank you so much, Dr. Satyam, for joining us. And viewers, and audience, we also have Jorge Sebastiao, who's a seasoned CTO advisor and speaker. Well, Jorge is somebody who has an experience in blockchain, cybersecurity, AI, IoT, 5G, cloud computing, disaster recovery, big data, managed services. Jorge is a professional advisor in several innovative startups using disruptive technologies with focus on generating business value. So I'd request now Dr. Satyam and Jorge to kindly come online. Thank you. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thanks. Well, good afternoon, Jorge. How are you?
It was a pleasure. It's a pleasure to speak with you yesterday and today as well again. Thank you.
Excellent.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So, the topic is very, very interesting. And I think in this time, especially, the world is going through so much disruption. This technology of face recognition has matured a lot since in the last 2 decades, I would say. I remember that in 2005 and all, we only had like 15 images on which you could train the algorithms. And today, with the advent of all public faces pretty much anywhere and in terabytes of data, the world has changed and the challenges are significant. So my question is, in your experience, what have you seen in terms of the maturity of face recognition technologies in the last, say, a decade or so?
Actually, the amount of evolution in terms of progress in face recognition has been tremendous for many reasons. It has been first at the hardware level, where, for example, now we can actually do things like face recognition even at the camera level. So that means there is a lot of the push from moving where this information is pressed. So you can do it either at the camera or even on the edge computing. So obviously this liberates substantially the amount of network traffic that is or needs to be generated if this processing was actually happening inside the data center. This also enables us to build in our smart cities a much more sophisticated command and control center. That really means that the command and control center, instead of being inside of a big building, it can now to be actually inside the police car, amongst other things. I think the second part is not just the technology, is the density and the availability of information. The advent of social media, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and all of the above, and many more, have generated massive amounts of information, both pictures and video, that has enabled us to develop very sophisticated capabilities. Some of them include things like, for example, Facebook is capable to recognize you without even looking at your face. So it means they can look at your back, the way you walk, the way you dress, and that's enough to actually achieve a pretty reasonable 80% match against you as an individual. So that is quite substantial. Even with the advent of this COVID, the Chinese have developed interesting technology that is also enabled to recognize people even behind the masks that we have started to wear because of the presence of COVID-19. So that means you're able to do much more sophisticated compliance and analytics. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think we could spend here many hours going into these advancements that we have seen in this last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, since you mentioned the social media and of course the use of modernization of technology to look at faces behind the mask, and also that they can actually detect who the person is by the walks and what bag you are carrying and how you hold the bag. I remember in like about 15 years ago or 2005, we were actually building similar thing, but it was so difficult. But now, with the advent of these new graphic machines, compute power, this is all possible. But one of the challenges that one sees, that even though these are pretty good and has resulted in good things, but it has also resulted in many bad things, right? One of the classic cases is of this called deep fakes, and of course we see that both in the political environment and certain other bad areas. So question is, who and when is the right time to actually regulate this? Or or maybe the first question is it actually can be regulated?
Actually, governance and regulation and I think we have to even go beyond regulation. I think we have to go sometimes in what I would call corporate ethics as well. So that really means because technology moves extremely fast, what ends up happening is regulation cannot keep up with technology, unfortunately. So that really means that in today's world, we need to have a combination of good corporate governance and good corporate practice. And anytime organizations today are not behaving properly, the punishment to them can be quite substantial. You know, when I mean by punishment, I don't necessarily even meaning putting people in jail. So when you get caught doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, like, for example, reading the clipboard in a mobile phone without naming names, that really means maybe your evaluation will drop by 20 or 30%. So I think that is pretty enough punishment for the founders of these organizations. However, I do see that there is very big advancements that have happened in Europe. First, Europe released a few years ago GDPR, and most organizations had to be compliant about 1 year ago. Of course, not everybody was, but I think we had a pretty good 70 or 80%. And with the advent of GDPR, now we saw things that go beyond GDPR, like ISO 277.0.0.1.2, so that enables us to have a much more structured approach towards enabling also the protection of privacy. So I think we always have to balance a little bit between the two. And the last point I was making was really about corporate ethics. So I do believe that organizations today that have a good ethical behavior towards the people they serve are the ones that have a longer chance to survive in the long term or even thrive, where the other ones, yes, they can do it for a short period of time, but when the problems arise, you'll have scenarios similar to the Cambridge Analytica, which are actually not good for anybody in the end run. So at the end of the day, I think even the regulations not being there, the fallout from such bad behavior will result in not good things for those organizations. And those organizations being completely sometimes disappearing forever as well.
Yeah. So and we have seen some of those things like discussions at a very high level, right? Both from the governmental side and as well as the computer societies of the world, that what can we do, especially now that there is a lot of effort to figure out best algorithms to detect deep fakes, because it is creating more problems than one actually thought of it from a fun point of view. And I think that certainly requires a lot of changes that needs to take place. And of course, as you said, the organizations that are building these algorithms can be held responsible at some point of the time. uh, uh, and I think that changes. But let's look at the positive sides of this. There are certainly many. As just before us, our friend from BMW, Matthias, was saying that they are building all these AI applications and putting it in open source. Now, my question is that leveraging this face recognition technology that is being developed by so many people, besides the face recognition players, which other industries can actually take advantage of this technology for various other operational aspects? Like I can think of one example, certainly oil and gas industry. The technology is very powerful and can take advantage of it. But I want to hear, before going into oil and gas, see what you have to say.
Well, like I do believe I can give you examples that go beyond oil and gas. One example would be, for example, building maintenance. So by using imaging on drones that go and visit the outsides of facades of buildings, can determine if there's problems with the cladding on the outside, and then schedule preventative maintenance. We are using also this technology for the last number of years, even in cellular tower maintenance, to try to identify problems with malfunctions or misconnections in the cables or any other thing that may have resulted from bad weather or other. More specifically, on the oil and gas, I do believe that you probably have tons of examples more than me, but certainly one that comes to mind is one that, again, is using drone technology to actually examine erosion on pipelines. As you know, over the last few years, there has been a few disasters in which when a pipeline ruptures, it can cause massive disruptions, massive fires, or even potential people death in the process. So having the capability of using high-grade imaging to detect early corrosion problems in these pipelines and do the preventative maintenance over many miles. So of course, this is not just imaging and AI, it's a combination of other technologies. The traditional drones that we use today will not be enough to do that, because the drone will have to fly sometimes for 3 hours, 6 hours. So they will not just be using the traditional batteries, but they'll be using, for example, hybrid technology or hybrid fuel technology. So like this, the drone can fly for a much longer period of time, collect the information, and then being able to analyze. One thing that I found interesting as well is, as we train these new image libraries, instead of just the drones collecting the data, the actual image processing, as I mentioned before, can happen on the edge. So the actual detection and reaction can happen much closer to when the images are actually being captured. So I look forward to hearing your versions of the story from the oil and gas field as well. So.
Yeah, I think certainly, like when I look at this technology and its applications, I think certainly edge computing devices will make this very easy if implemented in the right way and the right business challenges are deployed. And what you can see that especially the example that you gave about pipeline monitoring, that is certainly a great area, and this is being actually tested by many companies, and to see how it will actually work. But other than that, it's actually in the production area, people are trying to put this technology in the remote fields. There are companies from Europe that are building these video cameras which have the algorithms built onto them, so that it can alert the system in terms of like if an unwanted personality is visiting the place, certain things like that. Safety, so it increases the safety and security of these systems as well. And of course, in bigger operations, it has a lot of values, not only in terms of who's coming in and out of the site, and looking at other aspects of it in terms of like figuring out, say, corrosion, the one example that you gave, leaks of different kinds, and this technology can be actually applied. And the best thing is that many of these algorithms are now available in open source, question is to put them together for the right use and invest in it.
Yeah, actually, there's one other technology that I've seen have flourished with this image recognition and face recognition. And a lot of it has applied to, for example, digital signage. So as you know, today we're putting videos pretty much everywhere, like private videos. And with digital signage, they also put cameras to collect the feedback of whether those advertising or video signage is actually effective or not. So that really means we're combining on one side a marketing event that is a private snack TV event, but we're combining it with a measurement system that enables us to know if there is attention being generated by this advertising and whether this advertising is being consumed correctly and whether there is satisfaction associated with this advertising or not. Other areas that I found very interesting as well was in education, where they're using face recognition as well to measure the attention of the students and the satisfaction of the students vis-a-vis the material that is being taught by the teacher. So, and can provide some quite innovative metrics. So, of course, a lot of this innovation today is coming from China, which is doing massive investments in AI, and they're doing massive investments not just in the software of AI, but also enabling this AI to be transferred to chips or transferred to edge computing, or to enable much larger pipelines to pipe the data that is required to be processed by the AI. Of course, it goes a little bit even beyond 5G, because although we're talking today about 5G, people are already designing the next generation. That goes beyond 5G, because 5G will not be enough as we move forward.
Yeah, that's the thing about these technologies, right? They're maturing much faster than the adoption in many industries. And even like, say, 5G networks, adoption is only in certain areas, and still it's evolving. And certainly the task force for 6G already started to look at it and saying how it will improve on to 5G. So question is, when companies are talking about face recognition technology or its application in edge computing, edge devices, is that something that we all should really think about, that how it accelerates the pace of digital transformation for industries, right? We are talking only about right now smaller number of machines compared to maybe in 5 years, when maybe machines will communicate to each other, and how will they actually deal with this face recognition technology when human factor will be smaller compared to machine?
Actually, that's a very interesting way. As we move towards what people are afraid, we sometimes we tend to refer as singularity. I do believe that as we give more power to the machines, I think the humans have to stay in control. What it really means, I do see that as we use, for example, face recognition, image recognition, even in simple things as driving a car, when there is an accident, who do you punish? The driver of the car, the software, the designer, the company that put together the machine training libraries? So it's a little bit tricky, and we have already examples of where there is some failures. So I do believe that the human element is extremely important in addressing this combination of both. So I believe the way I see it today, let's talk even, for example, the example of AI as we use it today to read X-rays, MRIs, and other areas. The AI is not giving the diagnostic. The diagnostic is still being given by a trained doctor, a certified doctor. However, the AI is providing that doctor with extended capabilities that go beyond his own capacity to see. So it's almost like you're giving that doctor a capacity to see shades of colors that otherwise his eyes would not have been trained to see. But the ultimate decision on what to do with those results, what is the right course of action, what's the humane approach towards providing um, the diagnostic as well as the treatment to the patient. No machine today has this level of compassion, humanity that is required. So I think as we move forward, the balance is extremely important to achieve success in the usage of this technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. The one component that most people only talk is technology and its application, but we forget a major component of this enabler, which is called the talent. So, since you are in Dubai, sitting there, what are the challenges that you see in terms of the talent that can actually leverage this technology in, say, Dubai and Middle East?
Well, every part of the world has different issues associated with talent. I've been in the Middle East now for a little bit around 25 years. So being in the Middle East for this time, you kind of understand of the patterns, etc. So one of the issues sometimes associated with the Middle East, not as much as before, but in the initial days I arrived, is there is a big transition of resources. So people come, they stay 1 year, 2 years, they go. So there is sometimes for organizations a very big challenge to have continuity in their projects and save the skills. However, with the existing projects that the various countries have of nationalization, as long as they are brought in with the right level of training and knowledge transfer, then there is a more stable workforce. Another thing that I've seen in the Middle East certainly happen in the last 3 years is a much larger amount of startups in AI or technologies that complement AI. So there is a focus that enables both private industry, educational institutions, and governments to come together. As you know, Dubai, not as a country, but as a city country within the UAE, was one of the first one that actually appointed an AI minister. So that really sends a very clear message that AI is of an importance to develop the necessary technologies to drive government services and to enable the quality of life of the citizens and build an extremely successful smart city. So this has enabled much greater progress in advancement. Of course, a lot of the technology still comes today from outside, but now we're starting to get inherent technology being developed locally. I can give you one example that is quite interesting, and some of them have to do with insurance technology, or we sometimes call insurtech, which means today when you do have a car and the car happens to have an accident, and you need to have an evaluation of what is the damage to the car and how much it will cost to repair this car. Today, locally, some software has been developed that enables you take a few pictures of the car, set them for analysis, and you'll get a pre-estimate of what it will actually cost to already fix this car. And again, this is all based on image recognition technology and trained libraries that enable to achieve a fairly accurate assessment, and enables also the removal of what we sometimes call insurance fraud, which is very prevalent across the world. So this makes the insurance business much more effective in the analysis of its operations.
Yep. I think we're close to, I think, maybe 4 minutes left on this session, unless somebody tells us differently. But maybe we try to wrap this up with a comment from you, and then I'll close it. So I think the question that I have for you is that, what do you see? Can you envision, like, what will be this technology be in next 5 years?
Oh, that's a very tough question. Even it's like trying to predict the future. I believe that we have to embrace the future rather than to try to predict it sometimes too much. And I do believe that obviously AI is going to play an extremely important role. I think the key elements that are going to make the future advance more is as we develop what I would call open libraries, which means that systems that actually share the AI components. That's one area. The second area that I think is important is the area of sharing data. So there has been a few organizations that have been established through blockchain that enable you to share and monetize data so that the people that provide the data can protect that data or allow that data to only be used for the purpose that it was intended in the first place. And that really means that it will enable us to train much better AI systems and to also create a whole new economy that was not there before. So we're actually achieving two results: a better AI and a proper compensation for the people that are actually were involved in training this AI in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was the purpose for asking that question, because everybody thinks that we can actually predict the future with the technology. I think the best way to put it is learn to adopt and adapt the technology as it is now, and be agile in adopting it as it progresses. But what people are doing is, it's olden days of IT adoption. One technology comes, they replace it after 2 years, and then they start again, called the business process reengineering. But in today's era of industry 4.0 and soon to be industry 5.0, I think it is the time that one really need to adapt and adapt the technology as it is at a very fast speed, fail fast or adapt and modify, and keep up with it. And I think certainly that is the only way I think we can take the most advantage with these technologies. And certainly I've written about data democratization a long time back, that you don't have to share the whole data, but you still can use the data in a nice way, so you can actually create the value for all the industries. I think with that, we will wrap it up here. Thanks, George. Thanks everyone for listening. And I know World AI Show has been a great place for people in Dubai and Middle East to come and learn for some great things. And the mission of World AI Show to present the latest and the greatest technology and what's happening is very commendable. And I especially thank the team at World AI Show to invite me.
Likewise, it has been a pleasure. We thank obviously Mohammed Salim for the great work that he does with his comprehensive team. And we look forward to meeting either virtually or physically at the next event. All the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again, George and Dr. Satyam, for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.